All right, let's dive into one of the most fundamental questions in all of biology. What actually determines the biological sex of an organism? You might think it's a simple, straightforward process, but as we're about to see, nature has come up with some truly wild and fascinatingly different blueprints to get the job done.
So, the age-old question, boy or girl? It often feels like a simple coin toss, right? A 50-50 chance. But who, or what, is actually flipping that coin? Is it the mother? Is it the father? Or could it be something else entirely? Well, it turns out the answer completely changes depending on which species we're talking about.
Okay, so to get our bearings, let's start with the system we all know best, our own. The human way of doing things is a great starting point, and for us, it all comes down to our chromosomes.
Right, so inside pretty much every single cell in your body, you've got 46 chromosomes, and they're neatly organized into 23 pairs. Now, 22 of those pairs are what we call autosomes. They carry the instructions for things like your hair color, your height, all that good stuff. But it's that final 23rd pair, the sex chromosomes. That's where the action is for determining biological sex.
And here's the fundamental difference. Biologically, females have a pair of two very similar X chromosomes. We call this XX. Males, on the other hand, have one X and one, much smaller, Y chromosome, making them XY. This single pair is the genetic starting gun.
This brings us to a really important biological idea, heterogameity. It sounds kind of technical, I know, but all it means is producing two different kinds of reproductive cells, sperm or eggs, when it comes to sex chromosomes. In us humans, males are the heterogametic sex. Why? Because their sperm can carry either an X or a Y.
So let's put it all together. A mother's eggs will always carry an X chromosome. That's all she has to give. A father's sperm, though, is basically a 50-50 lottery of X-carrying and Y-carrying sperm. So, if an X sperm fertilizes the egg, you get XX, a female. But if a Y sperm wins the race, you get XY, a male. The big takeaway here is that it's the sperm that genetically determines the sex of the child. And this is exactly why understanding the basic science here is so incredibly important. This quote from our source material really hits home. It points out a painful social reality that's built entirely on a biological misunderstanding. The science is crystal clear. The determination of a child's sex comes down to whether the sperm carries an X or a Y. It makes blaming women completely, scientifically, baseless.
But here's where things get really interesting. The human XY system, it's just one way to solve the problem. Let's take a look at some of the other amazing blueprints nature has come up with across the animal kingdom.
Check this out. In certain insects, like grasshoppers, the system is even simpler. Females are XX, just like us, but males are XO. And that O isn't some new kind of chromosome. It literally means nothing is there. It signifies the complete absence of a second sex chromosome. So in this case, sex is determined simply by whether the sperm was carrying an X chromosome or nothing at all. Okay, now let's look at a system that completely flips the script on its head, the ZW system you find in birds. Here, it's the female who is heterogametic. The males have two similar chromosomes, called ZZ, but the females have two different ones, ZW. What does that mean? It means the mother's egg, which could carry either a Z or a W, is what decides the sex of the offspring, a total reversal of our system.
All right, if you thought that was a twist, just wait till you hear about the honeybee. They just throw the whole idea of different types of sex chromosomes out the window. Instead, they use a radically different system, based purely on the number of chromosome sets an individual gets.
This is called the haplodiploid system, and it works like this. If a queen's egg gets fertilized by a sperm, that offspring gets two sets of chromosomes. It's diploid, and it develops into a female. Simple enough? But if an egg is never fertilized, it doesn't just die. It can still develop all on its own. And that offspring, with only one set of chromosomes, haploid, becomes a male, what we call a drone.
Let's just stop and think about the absolutely bizarre family tree this creates. A male drone comes from an unfertilized egg, right? That means he has a mother, but he has no father. And because he only has one set of chromosomes to give, he can't produce sons. But he does have a grandfather, his mother's father, and he can have grandsons through his daughters. It's just a mind-bending consequence of this unique genetic setup. So, wow. After looking at just these few examples, let's step back for a second and take in the big picture. We have this one single biological process, determining sex, but nature has evolved all these completely different, totally distinct ways to get there.
So let's quickly recap the blueprints we've covered. You've got the human XY system, where the male's sperm is the deciding factor. Then you've got the grasshopper's exosystem, where it's about simply lacking a chromosome. Flip it around for birds with the ZW system, where the female's egg decides. And then there's the honeybee, where it's not about the type of chromosome at all, but the total number. It just shows there are so many paths to the same endpoint.
And seeing all this incredible variety really leaves us with one last big question. If a process as fundamental as determining sex can be solved in so many different ways, it just makes you wonder, what other biological rules that we take for granted are actually just one of many possible solutions, just waiting out there for us to discover?